Okay, what's up, folks? Today is Sunday, February 26, 2017. Rich Van Tassel with you, giving you our weekly NBA report. Starting, of course, as always, in the Eastern Conference. The Cavaliers still setting the pace. 40-17, they held a 3.5 game lead over the 37-21 Boston Celtics. And the Washington Wizards are 5.5 behind the Cleveland Cavaliers at 34-22. All of those teams are on losing streaks. Cleveland and Washington have only lost one. The Celtics have lost two. They, of course, had that loss right before the All-Star break. Of course, we're basically playing the first part of the games out of the All-Star break. And then they really got handled by the Toronto Raptors the other night. Toronto, they made the moves. They made another move at the deadline of getting P.J. Tucker. They're 34-24. 6.5 back of Cleveland. Winners of two straight. They won one going in to the break, one coming out. 6.5 behind Cleveland, as we said. 3 behind the Celtics for the top of that Atlantic division. Atlanta 32-26. They're losers of 3 straight. The Chicago Bulls now winners of 4 straight. They beat Cleveland again for the 3rd time this season. They are 30-29, tied with Indiana, who is also 30-29. Then you have Detroit rounding out the top of the Eastern Conference playoffs, I guess, as of right now. But it's not too early to talk about playoff time because we only got 20 plus games left. The Pistons 28-30. Looking at Chicago Bulls, they kept Jimmy Butler. No moves were made at the deadline, such as a Jimmy Butler. They did send Taj Gibson and Doug McDermott out to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Didn't really receive much back. Taj Gibson, I think, has always been an important member of that team, and I think Doug McDermott's a guy on the rise. So we'll see where exactly they're going from here on out. The Miami Heat, 27-32, only a game and a half behind the Detroit Pistons for the playoffs. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They've now won, 3 straight? They're very surprising. Well, I guess what's most surprising to me is what a poor start they got off to, considering this is a team that was 48-34 last year. You have Goran Dragic still leading the way, over 20 points per game, so he's handling himself in that regard. But we got to give Erik Spoelstra a lot of credit. He's a damn good basketball coach. Again, it's just really surprising to me that the team started out as slowly as they did. They were, 11-30 maybe? Was it that bad where they were 11-30 and they're 16-2? They had that enormous winning streak, so yeah, that's probably it. They've just been cruising thus far. Let's see if they can catch Detroit. Detroit is a team that was in the playoffs last year, so it's interesting to see. Of course, Miami doesn't have Dwayne Wade anymore and Chris Bosh, but he played most of the year last year. Or he didn't play most of last year. He was injured. Milwaukee 25-31. They're up and down once again. Charlotte, they did get a win last night over the Sacramento Kings. They're 25-33, still only 3 out of the last playoff spot. But this team is really in a nosedive as of now. I think they were 14-11 at one point, and now they've dropped all the way to 25-33. They've completely gone downhill, a lot like the New York Knicks. But the Knicks, weren't 48-34 last year. Kemba Walker's still leading the way for the Charlotte, going back in time for the Charlotte Hornets. 22.5 points per game. He was an all-star. I'm just really surprised by the Charlotte Hornets. This was a team, I know they lost Jeremy Lin, but to come out as they did, as well as they did, and then to just completely backtrack the way they've been doing is very surprising to me. I'm not really sure what to put as far as the finger on the pulse of why this team has struggled the way they have. It's just confusing to me. You have a quality player like Kemba Walker, and guys like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist coming on, Frank Kaminsky, another young guy. Obviously Michael Jordan isn't happy, but what to say about that team. Let's see if they can turn it around. They didn't make any moves at the deadline. They certainly have their work cut out for them if they want to make the playoffs, but not much to say about that. New York Knicks, they got the win over the Philadelphia 76ers last night. The Knicks are still only 4.5 out. Of course, the Sixers are only 6 out. They're right next to each other. The Knicks 24-35, Sixers 22-36. Again, the Knicks, just like the Bobcats, I mean, the Knicks are what? They were 14-10. They've been 10-25. They weren't even that bad last year, a 10-25 stretch. So, again, that's become a mess. I'm really surprised considering they added, whether you want to say, guys like Noah, guys like Rose, guys like Brandon Jennings were, the right guys, or if they just overpaid for them, still they were an upgrade over what they had. So, another bad year for the New York Knicks. We'll have to see if they can finish out the stretch, even get close to the playoffs. But surprising that they're plummeting. Orlando Magic quietly have really started to go downhill. They're 22-38, 3-7 in the last 10. They're only better than the Brooklyn Nets, who are 9-49 and losers of 16 straight. That team's looking at 65 plus losses. Of course, Celtics fans are all excited that Brooklyn, is losing because they may get the 25% chance of Brooklyn's pick. Brooklyn already locked that up a long time ago, folks, so you don't have to worry about that. But Orlando, I want to go back to them. The Nets are 9-49. That's the last we'll say about them. Orlando was a team I was expecting to be around 35 wins, really closing in on not the playoffs, but certainly closing in on showing the improvement, and they've just not gotten it together. They, of course, shipped Ibaka out of town, and they now are relying on Vucevic to carry the load. No longer have Oladipo. Of course, he was involved in that Ibaka trade, so we'll have to see what happens with the Orlando Magic. Are they going to try to build through the draft? Of course. And now moving to the Western Conference, Golden State Warriors, 49-9, still setting the pace. Of course, their differential is what's really separating themselves. 12.8, just shy of 13. Of course, you contrast that to the San Antonio Spurs, who are 44-13, have a plus 8.4 in their differential. 8.4 is pretty spectacular. I mean, Houston at 42-18 is plus 6.9. Those are two very good differentials, and Golden State is completely trouncing that. 8-2 in the last 10 for the Warriors, 8-2 for the Spurs, 7-3 for the Houston Rockets. Utah up to 4th. They have the 1-game advantage over the Los Angeles Clippers and the 2.5-game advantage over the Memphis Grizzlies for the last of that home court advantage spots. I mean, 1 through 3 is basically set. Golden State has a 4.5-game lead over San Antonio. San Antonio has a 3.5-game lead over Houston, and Houston a 5-game lead over Utah. So you really have Utah, the Clippers, and the Grizzlies. And I guess you can throw the Thunder in there at 33-25. They're all fighting it out to see who's gonna, place 4 through 6, of course, and that's or 4 through 7, and that's gonna determine as well a lot to do with who gets the home court in that first round matchup. The Clippers, 35-23. Chris Paul's come back. They've still lost 2 straight. 5-5 in their last 10. Clippers, I'm surprised they didn't make a move at least to upgrade their team, because I see this team as maxing out. And let's see if moves happen in the offseason. Of course, you have Blake Griffin, who's going to be a free agent. But as far as the Clippers, I feel personnel-wise they're the only team that can match up to the Warriors and give them any sort of run. But they're not going to regardless. So let's see how they finish out the string. Memphis, of course, 34-25. They're a good basketball team. They play very hard. Marc Gasol putting over 20 points per game. He's come back around. They, of course, lost to the Pacers, who ended their losing streak. Mike Conley, 6.2 assists per game. Of course, he signed that big contract. He's putting up 19.1, so it's not like the Grizzlies aren't getting performances from these guys. They're a quality basketball team. Again, they're just at the wrong time. I think they probably maxed out when they reached the conference finals. They've had their injury problems since then, but you're looking at a team that is up there. They'd be very good in the Eastern Conference. They're just not in a position this year. It's kind of like, the New York, they're kind of like the Washington Wizards, but better, the Wizards of the mid-2000s. They've obviously accomplished more than that, but they're just a quality team, but that's just playing against a lot of better opponents. Then you have Oklahoma City, 33-25. And then Denver, at 8, 26-32. Sacramento, a game and a half behind that 8 spot, 25-34. Portland continues to struggle, 24-33. But they're, basically only the 1.5 out. Mavericks have taken over the Pelicans, who, of course, acquired DeMarcus Cousins. They're 26 games behind first, so they're 3 out of Denver, and then 3.5 for the Pelicans, 3.5 for the Minnesota Timberwolves. I'd like to see if the Timberwolves can make moves. Karl Anthony Towns putting down 24 points. Do you have that core? Ricky Rubio is still even pretty young with this team. I was expecting a lot more from the Timberwolves. I mean, I had them as potentially being a top 4 seed, but Karl Anthony Towns, 24 points, 12.1 rebounds. He's really a quality basketball player. I'm surprised that the Timberwolves continue to struggle. Of course, the Pelicans made that move for DeMarcus Cousins. I look at Minnesota and the Pelicans, and of course the Portland Trailblazers as the biggest threat to the Denver Nuggets in the 8th seed. Then you have the Lakers, 19-40. Of course, they got Magic Johnson running the show now. They're improving, but still not getting where they need to go. And then the Phoenix Suns, 18-40. Okay, quickly, power rankings. Golden State, of course, number 1. San Antonio, number 2. Going to keep the Cleveland Cavaliers, number 3. Then you have the Houston Rockets, number 4, and I gotta bump the Celtics out and put the Utah Jazz at number 5. All right, we'll probably do a player focus in a little bit. Be sure to stay tuned for that. Remember, we appreciate all subscriptions as well. Moving forward, got to really dive into the NBA as we hit the stretch run. So be sure to stay tuned for all that, and we'll see you next time. Thank you so much, folks. Have a good one.